Hey everyone, you are watching John and Theory. Hello to everybody who is checking this out on YouTube, and of course, those of you who are listening via the John and Theory podcast. So happy you're here. And it's Sunday. It is a couple of days after WandaVision has landed on Disney Plus, the first two episodes. So you can watch it right now, which is, you know, pretty easy to do. It's on Disney Plus. I'm sure a lot of you who are checking this out either have access to Disney Plus or you know somebody who does. And WandaVision is kind of the next big thing since The Mandalorian to hit the service. Before we get started, we're going to go through, WandaVision, my thoughts on the show, of what I've seen so far, and then we're going to look at a positive review of the show and a negative review of the show. But before we get into all of that, just want to say hello. I'm sorry I've been kind of not here, not a couple of days this past week. I've been extraordinarily busy, a lot busier than usual. I did do a stream yesterday. I did an Incredibles Dungeons and Dragons episode here on the live stream. It was a lot of fun. Did it with Corey Woodruff. The sound quality was really bad, and I apologize. My audio was messed up. I don't know how it happened. So I ended up not publishing that on the podcast just because it really was that bad. But we still had fun, and so I just want to tease that the Incredibles Dungeons and Dragons live play is still on track. If you want to learn more about it, I might do another stream this week to talk about it, especially if any of you are interested or want to check out the handbook. It is going to be a ton of fun. I'm so excited to see all the different supers people create. But all right, that's enough table setting. Let's talk about WandaVision. My brief review of this show, I mentioned in the description that this is the first Marvel Cinematic Universe series that is set in Phase 4. So this is coming to us after we, of course, get, Far From Home was the last, I think, in Phase 3, if I'm not mistaken. But this is like was it Phase 3? I can never keep it straight, but you get what I'm saying. Post Avengers Endgame, this is like the next continuation of the Marvel characters. It primarily centers around, of course, Wanda Maximoff, played by Elizabeth Olsen, and Vision, played by Paul Bettany. Now, spoilers for Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. Paul Bettany's character, Vision, does die in Infinity War, and unlike a lot of the other characters who come back in Endgame, he is not one of them because Thanos did not snap him away, so he couldn't come back. The thing that was powering Vision was the Infinity Stone, and without that, he can't really function. Elizabeth Olsen has come back. She is now alive again. And in Endgame, we didn't really see a wrap up to her story. We didn't really see the fallout. We saw her sort of lash out at Thanos, and that was about it. And this show is meant to be a tying of that loose end. It's a mini series. There's going to be 9 episodes. 2 of them are out so far. Critics have looked at the first 3, and it's a very, very drastic departure for Marvel. Not just in terms of their shows, but in terms of just their content. This is a very absurdist, very weird, true to House of M and Vision, those comic series that explore Vision and Scarlet Witch's relationship as something that is kind of cosmic and out there and possibly related to alternate realities, the multiverse, and all of that. Originally, this show was going to be coming to us after we get 2 other Marvel things. We were supposed to get, or maybe even 3, because I think we were supposed to get Black Widow before this, and we were supposed to get Internals, and maybe Falcon and Winter Soldier. I can't remember if Falcon and Winter Soldier was supposed to be before this. Probably not, actually, but either way, we are getting this early, which is, begging a lot of questions from people of, like, were we supposed to get it this early? Because the show drops you into this very strange occurrence where literally it starts with a sitcom format where we don't know what's going on. We don't know why this is a sitcom. We don't know why Scarlet Witch and Vision are, a married couple in what appears to be a recreation of like the Dick Van Dyke Show. And some weird things start happening. But other than that, it plays like a sitcom. Now, I'm not going to be getting into spoilers. There's not much to spoil, to be fair. But I am going to be talking about, did I like this? And then we'll look at some positive and negative reviews. I do like it. I thought it was funny, and I thought it was very weird, very Pleasantville. And the first 2 episodes, I like how they are going sort of decade to decade. You kind of start in the 50s in the first episode, and it's kind of like Dick Van Dyke and, that kind of thing. And then the second episode is a lot like Bewitched. We're more in the 60s. There's a larger ensemble. The main thrust of the sitcom story is that Vision and Scarlet Witch have their powers. they have to hide their powers from other people. It's like Bewitched in that sense. And it's just, it's amazing to me that this is written like a self-serious and self-actualized like it's like you're watching a real sitcom from this era. Like they don't, shoehorn a ton of like references, or they don't make it all about being self-aware that they're in a sitcom. It actually just plays like a normally written one. It's kind of impressive the way they pull it off. So I was enjoying it just on that level. I wasn't enjoying it as like a Marvel like weird story. I was enjoying it as like a throwback sitcom, which is a kind of a fascinating thing to me. And I thought it pays really respective tribute to those classic shows and that era, the TV Land thing. It doesn't, so far, it doesn't quite go into the Pleasantville route, where Pleasantville is like a treatise on how those old shows, like Leave It to Beaver and Dick Van Dyke and all of them, they were, Americana. They were kind of, glossing over the real problems of that era. And Pleasantville is a great commentary on that, and, a very good film. So far, the show isn't really going there. It's just sort of being like it's like they're trapped in this like weird alternate universe, and Wanda is apparently behind it all, like trying to cope with the death of Vision. And we get some references to some like insider Marvel things that are going to be pointing toward possibly the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, including the next Doctor Strange movie, which is supposed to be the plan. So all together, I'm very intrigued with this show. I'm invested. I want to keep watching. I want to see where this goes. I'm really impressed with the chemistry between Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany in this. I thought that they were, interesting characters in the Marvel movies, the Avengers films that they show up in, and, Captain America Civil War. But I never thought that they stood out very much. I never thought that they were like a reason to really like check out these Marvel films. So I was never that impressed with them in general. But I think this show is great because it's a time to pause and like just focus on them. These are great actors, and they do a good job of like getting into getting into character here. Very strange character. There are references to the Marvel movies. I think you do need to see other Marvel things in order to appreciate this. I can't imagine seeing this blind unless you had read the comics, so you have an idea that like Scarlet Witch and Vision, they've always not always, but like for the vast majority of Marvel history been like a thing. And their romance is very, very important to the Marvel Universe, especially the Infinity Gauntlet series. So all that said, very accessible show. As weird as it is, I could see people enjoying it, and I hope that it continues to stay as good as I find it. But that's enough of what I think of WandaVision. Let's look at a positive review of WandaVision. So I chose this one. This is via The Spool, which is an outlet that I actually write for from time to time. And this is by Clint Worthington, who is the editor-in-chief. So I've done plenty of reviews on the site with his guidance, and he's a great writer. This was a recommend from somebody on Twitter because I asked for a positive review and a negative review, and this was the positive review I was sent. For the negative review, there are not that many, so I had to pick that one. But this positive review is a pretty good read from what I've been told, but I haven't read this yet. So we are going to be jumping into this positive review of WandaVision. We're all going to be fresh on it. So let's go through it, and let's see what we agree with and what we don't agree with. So the headline is, WandaVision starts slow, but bodes well for the MCU's future on TV. So a pretty hopeful note from Clint. Disney's first real-time at bat for the MCU on television is a sprightly experimental series that makes great, if deliberately paced, use of its premise. That is the caption. We should say, this is the first Marvel series on Disney Plus. We have gotten other Marvel series like Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Iron Fist Defenders, but most of those have been Netflix, and then the other ones have been ABC, like network TV. And what really separates WandaVision from those shows is that those shows were always very ancillary to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They paid lip service, for the most part, to what was going on in the movies. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. slightly more against that, although the first couple of seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. really aligned with what was going on in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, things would happen in, like, Captain America Winter Soldier, for example, that would completely change what was going on in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And that's kind of one of the things I really liked about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. early on. But then as the show went on, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. kind of just started doing its own thing. It started exploring Inhumans. It started going to space. It started just doing things that really had nothing whatsoever to do with what, the Marvel Cinematic Universe was doing. And Agents of Shield is kind of over at this point, so we're now entering a new era. This stuff is going to be hitting Disney Plus from now on, and I don't know if hit me up in the live chat or the comments if you agree or disagree on if this is the best move. I have a feeling most people are kind of feeling like, as much as the Daredevil was good in the first season, people liked those shows. I've always felt like they were disconnected. They never really felt part of MCU. They were just sort of one-off things that you could just watch on their own, which was fine for what they were. But okay, so Clint's review. Admitted, we're all preemptively exhausted by Disney Plus's seemingly endless onslaught of new films and franchise shows set to premiere over the next few years. We're going to be practically drowning in content, all geared toward immersing us in the brands and IPs they mercilessly control and ask audiences to buy into an overwhelming web of interconnected stories. I will say that I think Clint is right that we are probably going to feel overwhelmed to an extent. Although that said, it looks like the plan Disney Plus has right now is that they're not really releasing a ton of stuff simultaneously. It looks like they're just going to be like do-si-doing different pop culture moments. Like after WandaVision, we're going to jump right into something else, and after that, we're going to jump into something else. We've seen this with like not just Marvel stuff, but Star Wars. After the big Star Wars thing, there's going to be a Pixar thing, and then there's going to be a Disney animation thing, and then there's going to be a Marvel thing, and that seems to be the plan. So at the very least, I think that we hopefully won't feel that overwhelmed because there is a diversity of content. It's not like superhero. It's like superhero, sci-fi, maybe an original thing, an animated thing. You get it. But okay, where were we? Okay, that said, says Clint, if WandaVision is a bellwether for the level of experimentation and creativity we can expect from some of these shows, we might not be in the worst hands. Don't expect to get the full picture of what's going on in Captain Marvel co-writer Jack Schaefer's series right away. In fact, the 3 episodes provided to critics for review cut off just as we start to get a peek behind the curtain. I should point out I have not seen the 3rd episode, but that does seem to be the case. It seems like the 3rd episode gets into like it's color now, and it's like it gets into like the 70s era of TV. Clint says, but what we do know is this. Wanda Maximoff, aka Scarlet Witch, Elizabeth Olsen, and Vision, Paul Bettany, who was last seen killed by Thanos in Infinity War and Endgame, heavily implies the anti-snap didn't bring him back, since Thanos just killed him with his bare hands. Are living lives of, so he's talking about the characters. So these 2 characters are living lives of domestic suburban bliss within the black and white confines of a sanitary I Love Lucy / Dick Van Dyke show, like 50s sitcom, set in the fictional suburb of Westview. There are shades of Bewitched in there too, with the show's animated intro and their farcical attempts to hide their superpowers from coworkers and nosy neighbors alike. And I think the Bewitched thing becomes, as I mentioned before, it becomes more pronounced in the 2nd episode. That's when the animated intro happens. I don't know if anybody like watching, listening is that familiar with the TV Land Nick at Night stuff, but that's something that I grew up with personally. This is John talking, and I definitely was here for it. So back to Clint. They twirl around their mod-furnished living room studio set, exchanging one beaming bon mot after another to canned studio laughter. I don't know what bon mot means, I have to admit. I'm not fancy enough. Canned studio laughter, which, by the way, I thought the laugh track is actually pretty well realized in this. I never thought it was overdoing it. They breathlessly fumble their way through farcical scenarios like an impromptu dinner with Vision's stern boss, Fred Melamed, or trying to win the community talent show with a magic show. I have to say, the 2nd episode, I think, with the talent show gimmick, I actually enjoyed a lot more than the first. I think the first episode is really, really well constructed where it goes with the boss format, and Deborah Jo Rupp is in it, by the way, too. And it has a really cool moment of, like, total weird surrealness. But the 2nd episode, I don't know, I thought it was a bit funnier. I thought that the talent show thing was really funny. There's really, I don't know, you just start to get, like, more of, like, the side characters in this fake show. And I'm just, I don't know, it made me happy. I felt the comfort of a 50/60 show all the way through this. Okay, so Clint says, but like the Truman Show or Pleasantville, cracks start to show in the squeaky clean firmament of their carefully curated environment. A new neighbor named Geraldine, Teyonah Parris, shows a suspicious level of interest in Wanda. So Teyonah Parris, I recognize her from Mad Men. She plays Dawn in that, not Dawn Draper. They joke that up, and she's like one of the, I think she becomes an employee of Sterling Cooper Draper Price in like the 4th or 5th season. I forget which one. Vision has no idea what the computational services company he works for does. The community seems a bit too pleasant, especially when they stop to echo communal cries of "for the children." What's more, as Wanda and Vision's relationship progresses from marriage to sex to the prospect of expanding their family, their sitcom world begins to progress through the years to a groovy 70s Brady Bunch pastiche, and one gets the feeling that our two Avengers are lost in a world not of their own making. Yeah, that definitely becomes pretty clear like early. Like we know the whole time throughout this show that this isn't real. I think it's pretty obvious. And I was almost feeling like a little bit like, why are they withholding so much information? It's annoying when it's week to week. But this is John talking, by the way. It seems to me that they want this to be kind of a Westworld thing, a puzzle box kind of show. The reason that it's coming out week to week, the reason we only get 2 episodes to start with, and then it's going to be 1 episode per week, is because they want this to be a water cooler show. They want people to speculate. They want people to find Easter eggs. They want articles like this, to be written, and for people to like have message boards and to be like, what is going on? What is going to happen? It's something that we really have lost as binging has become not just the more common, model of like TV shows that most people are consuming, but for some people it's becoming the preferred model. And I do really appreciate that some streaming services, Disney Plus being one of the big ones, probably the biggest one, arguably, are really trying to bring back that week-to-week format and being like, we can do that with streaming, and we should do that with streaming because water cooler shows have a place. Certainly, like Netflix is just fine doing what they do with their bingeable model because people love that as well. And the thing that I think that was lost with the bingeable model is that these shows just come and go and we don't have the communal like conversation about it. We talk about it like we binge it really fast and then things get lost. We don't really dissect what we're watching. A lot of people just miss it completely because the conversation ends after a week. Whereas stuff like WandaVision and Mandalorian and Ted Lasso, like these shows have more staying power. And I do really appreciate that. I think that that's really helpful for people who want to consume pop culture in a different way. Okay, so Clint says, to say more would reveal some of the show's considerable charms, which are slow to appear but welcome when they do. The overriding priority for Schaefer and director Matt Shakman, who cut his teeth as an actor on plenty of sitcoms before building up an impressive resume of television, directing gigs on shows from Ugly Betty to It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, I have to say those are 2 shows I haven't watched a lot of, is to nail the aesthetic of the sitcom worlds Wanda and Vision inhabit. And they pull that off in spades. The 60s sitcom world is a boxed-in 4x3 film as a multi-cam sitcom with setups that will be familiar to anyone who spent a childhood immersed in those kinds of shows, while their trip to the 70s has more feathered hair and technicolor than you can shake an infinity gauntlet at. And I haven't seen that episode, but the 70s one, but I'm looking forward to it. Christoph Beck nails the jaunty sitcom score interstitials that bookend scenes, while Frozen songwriters Robert Lopez and Kristen Anderson Lopez gift our leads with period-appropriate jingles that befit whatever decade they're trapped in now. That was a really fun experience when I was watching this, and I saw Robert Lopez and Kristen Anderson Lopez. I was like, oh my gosh, because they did the music for not just the first Frozen, but Frozen 2. And it makes sense, especially like when you watch the animated intro and like the music of like WandaVision. It's very catchy. It's they're great songwriters. So I think that it makes sense that they were tapped for this as a Disney score composer alums. So Clint says it helps that Olsen and Bettany take to the aesthetic trappings like a duck to water. They've got electric chemistry, modulating effortlessly between the heightened theatricality of sitcom acting to moments of tenderness and horror as they come down off their studio audience highs and start to realize the situation they found themselves in. One thing, this is John, by the way, one thing I do wish this show had more of is like that horror element. Like it gets into it, but it doesn't, not yet at least. Like I hope it's building to that. It's not something, a criticism. It's more of I hope that like things get even more off kilter because that would feel like the natural direction for this show. Bettany, in particular, throws himself into the world with gusto. One laments we haven't seen him do farce a lot more often until now. Excuse me, this is John, by the way. Knight's Tale. Paul Bettany in Knight's Tale is as farcical as he ever needs to be. He is a treasure, especially in that film. But I do agree, he doesn't get to do this comedic mode enough, I think. Clint says they're surrounded by a game supporting cast too, from Paris's mysterious new friend to Catherine Hahn's uproariously nosy neighbor. Catherine Hahn is fantastic in this, who may know more about what's happening than she's letting on. Those expecting the kind of action spectacle we've come to expect from the Marvel Cinematic Universe will be sorely disappointed, but I love that Marvel is taking the opportunity to use this expansive universe to actually try new things rather than just grafting shades of other film genres onto existing action blockbuster formulas. So yeah, the vibe I'm getting from most positive reviews is that they are appreciating WandaVision for the virtue of being different. Obviously, it's executing its unique flavor in a good enough way. Like, it's not just that it's different, it's that it's executing it well. And so it gets both, virtues of that. It gets to be like, oh, it's good, and it's like actually it actually feels like something we haven't seen before from Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I would go a step further and I'd say it's not something we've seen for anything superhero related. And I think that's nice. I think that there were times when I was watching this where I was thinking this has real potential to be a show that really goes beyond the surface level, which definitely makes me hopeful that shows after WandaVision are going to, continue that flavor. Although I have to say with, Falcon and Winter Soldier doesn't look like it's going to be really going for that vibe, but I hope I'm wrong. So Clint says, WandaVision is the first real MCU show to attempt the kind of formal and narrative experimentation Peak TV expects. One hopes that as the layers keep getting peeled back on this particular onion, they keep this momentum going and stick the landing. If they do, the future of the MCU on Disney Plus is looking surprisingly bright. So yeah, there's nothing really I disagree with in this review. I mean, I think very, very minor things. I don't even remember. But yeah, for the most part, I think that Clint's pretty spot on with his analysis. I'm about as positive as he is. I think that there's a lot to like here. I think that Kevin Feige, I know that he has wanted to do something like this for a while, something in the TV land genre. I like that they're doing something kind of risky, but it's clear that they're keeping it like honed in. They're not actually like taking so many swings that it turns off an entire audience. I think they're striking a pretty decent balance, but we have to get into the negative review. I'm very curious what the negative reaction to this is. When I looked on Rotten Tomatoes, I honestly did not see a lot of negative reviews. It looked like there were only 8 out of like 100 to 200. And this is one of the ones I saw. It is from a website that I read quite often, RogerEbert.com. And I'm a big fan of RogerEbert.com. My co-host Cinemaholics, Abiel Chessie, has written for them. And I love going on this. I'm a big fan of Roger Ebert, like most people, I suppose, in the film critic community. But this negative review comes from Roxana Haddadi. And I'm going to say right here, I definitely have nothing against like a negative review. I hope my goal for this is that I learn something about the show, or I see a different perspective that maybe enlightens what, my opinion of it. Not saying I'll change my mind or anything like that, or that I feel like a need or anything to like defend like my opinion, but I want to see with the negative. I'm curious like what is it about the show that might not be working for other people. And the reason I want to know that is because I think it'll help me expand my horizons. It'll help me expand my perspective as a critic. It'll help me contextualize this if I decide I want to recommend this or not recommend this to somebody who is curious about the show and coming to me for an opinion. So that is the goal with this. We are not here to hate, because that is useless. So Roxana starts her review. Cleverness is a welcome thing, but it can't be the only thing. WandaVision, the first collaboration between Marvel Studios and Disney Plus that begins airing on the streaming service on January 15th, has a strong grasp of sitcom tropes, is deft at subverting them with a wink to the audience, and finally lets Paul Bettany be funny again. A Knight's Tale fans rejoice, for Bettany returns to the same kind of zaniness that made his Chaucer so fun. Yeah, it's full agreement with Roxana so far. I think that this is very true. I mean, I said the same thing, like cleverness or like being different for the sake of being different is nice, but it can't be the only thing. Like there has to be more to it than just being subversive. So we agree so far. But it's difficult to tell where WandaVision is going to go based on the series' first 3 episodes provided for review. I think that's also true. It does kind of leave you hanging just 2 episodes in. I don't know where this is going, and I hope it's going in a good direction, but the show doesn't give you a lot to like. It's intriguing and like I mentioned before, a puzzle box way, but it's definitely not like laying really serious groundwork where I'm like, whoa, this is going to be some real payoff. I hope there's really good payoff, but I don't see that yet. So Roxana says, each half-hour installment is so defined by allusions to classic TV like I Dream of Jeannie, The Dick Van Dyke Show, Bewitched, I Love Lucy, and The Brady Bunch, that its titular characters seem sidelined in their own series. The show within a show format makes for cheeky diversions, like a series of commercials that reference other elements of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, including Stark Industries and Hydra. I really like these ads, by the way. They have, especially as a Mad Men fan, I was like, oh my gosh, I could totally see Don Draper like doing that ad, especially the Watch one. But ultimately, feels somewhat shallow. So, yeah, I don't know. I definitely didn't feel this way. I didn't feel like they were sidelined. I wonder if she's saying like their real personas feel sidelined, because clearly, the actors aren't sidelined. They are the center of the show. They're in the show a lot. That is an interesting perspective that like so far we haven't really gotten an impression of like who these characters are outside of this farce. I think though, I guess the reason I don't feel that way, like they're sidelined, is because I do think that their personalities are coming out through the sitcom format. Except the exception of Wanda Maximoff, because we never had like personas for these characters, did we? Like in the Avengers movies, like I feel like I just never connected to Vision. I never connected to Scarlet Witch in Civil War or anything like that, because they were just changed so much. We didn't see them that often. They were never main characters. So I think with this show, to me, they're still blank slates. Like I'm still just sort of like connecting with them on a totally new set of terms. So I'm not feeling like I don't have expectations for these characters, which is probably why the show is like filling an itch that I have, or scratching an itch. So Roxana says, WandaVision makes an initial commitment to playfulness, but the realization that this experimentation remains in service of a larger, continued narrative rather than fully standing on its own removes, at least in these first 90 or so minutes, any real sense of narrative stakes. That's interesting in terms of stakes. Yeah, I mean, I think that is a fair criticism, because in terms of stakes, I half agree. I'd say that like I don't think there are a lot of stakes in terms of investment in what's going on, but I do feel stakes in this relationship, and that it feels like it's not real, and that I like these characters, and I do like Vision and Scarlet Witch, even though I don't have like a strong like impression of them as characters. I do want success for them. I am invested in them. So I don't know if I fully agree with this. Like, yeah. And maybe that's what she means by narrative stakes, because they don't tell you anything about the narrative, so I don't understand the danger yet. Hopefully they will start to do that more in the 4th episode. But yeah, okay, fair criticism there. Set after the events of 2018's Avengers Infinity War and 2019's Avengers Endgame, and influenced by various Marvel comic runs, including the 1980 series The Vision and the Scarlet Witch, or The Vision and the Scarlet Witch, and 2005's House of M, WandaVision imagines a reality in which Vision didn't die in Infinity War, so that villain Thanos could retrieve the Mind Stone. Vision's romantic partner Wanda also died, was brought back to life, and kind of like we know all this stuff already. Still, Wanda, also known as Scarlet Witch, couldn't restore Vision at the end of Endgame because of some time travel hijinks with the Mind Stone, and so when WandaVision begins with the two of them reunited, it's already starting off with a mystery. The premiere sets the stage. Wanda and Vision are newlyweds who settle into a new home in the suburb of Westview, but there's a twist. Characters also happen to be starring in a 1950s styled sitcom. Yeah, we've already talked about this stuff. Yeah, how will this duo fit in? Very true. And we can kind of gloss over this since we already talked about it. Yeah, let's just move on to the criticisms. But the premiere's final few minutes clue us into something else amiss. When Vision's boss, his wife, a welcome Deborah Jo Rupp, asks how Wanda and Vision met and where they lived before moving to Westview. I think there's going to get into some spoilers, so you might want to dip out at this part. I don't like that this is getting so spoilery. The laugh track fades out. The camera stays still first on Wanda's stricken face, centered in the frame, and then Vision's. What are they not remembering? And when the episode of the show within a show ends, and it's revealed that someone is watching all this on one monitor among many, WandaVision tips its hand. Each of the 2 subsequent episodes provided for review follows a similar format. Wanda and Vision jump into a new decade to recreate another recognizable sitcom, reflect the social mores of the 1960s, 1970s, or whatever time in their characterizations, their relationship, and their status in the suburbs, with nods to the Stepford Wives and even more modern fare like Pleasantville. So man, both of these reviews mention Pleasantville. And incrementally realize that their reality is not really their reality. The disappointing thing, though, okay, here we go. The disappointing thing, though, is how quickly we realize that, too, and how WandaVision is more interested in maintaining fawning mimicry than furthering its own storytelling. I don't know. I feel like this is pretty harsh. Like, I'm not saying it's not valid, but it is kind of harsh in, like, the first 3 episodes. Like, if it's true for the 3rd episode, I think I kind of agree, because, like, it is sort of, like, dangling us and not giving us enough to go off of. But at the same time, the more I think about it, there are a lot of like clues and hints that they are dropping in the 2nd episode. They're not being that subtle with some of these mysteries. And so I don't know. I guess you could say that they're not striking the best balance, but they are doing some. I don't know. I think this is being a little harsh for the first couple episodes. Although, to be fair, there are only 9 episodes, so maybe that's part of the frustration. It's like, how much of the show are we really going to get? How much can they explain and when? Okay, director Matt Shackman, head writer Jack Schaefer, and production designer Mark Worthington clearly have oodles of affection for these TV classics, and practically every in these recognizable scenarios and in the clear delight from Olsen, Bettany, and the supporting cast. In particular, the sassily mugging Han as a nosy neighbor. Her delivery of, "How is anybody doing this sober?" during a particularly painful women's committee meeting is fantastic. And the reliably warm Tiona Paris as Wanda's fast friend, Geraldine. But there are only so many ways to make jokes about Vision not eating food and about the couple using Wanda's Sokovian, not Sarkovian, I don't think, ancestry to explain their strangeness, and about Vision not understanding the details of human sex. And once WandaVision starts recycling the same content in each episode, it becomes difficult to ignore that the show's primary interest is playing with form rather than propelling its story forward. So yeah, I guess that's like a regurgitation of her earlier criticism. It's that it's getting bogged down in the like sitcom jokiness, like the alternate universe jokiness and weirdness, but it's not actually like giving us like more story. Now, that might be the case for the third episode, since I haven't seen it. I have to say, I do think the second episode does push the story forward. I can't give anything away. There is something that happens at the end of the second episode where I was like, oh, that it's clearly we're moving into like another direction. And so my interest was kept. So I can't say I totally agree with this. And then also, I think that the jokes they do about Vision being a robot and Scarlet Witch being a witch, I don't know. I thought that they were pretty fresh with it. Yeah, there's only so many ways, but they do different kinds of jokes, like including like what happens when he eats and stuff of like, the fact that he doesn't understand humor, stuff like that. I think that they're being so far pretty fresh. Okay. Roxana continues. To be fair, the series is comparatively quite different from the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's films, which grew darker as the franchise's Phase 3 came to an end, and from Marvel's series on Netflix, like Daredevil, Jessica Jones, and Luke Cage, which were interconnected within themselves, but didn't really link up with the films at large. Yeah, that's very true. In WandaVision, though, characters actually laugh. Wanda and Vision are able to be in love. Vision makes a joke about mistaking mastication for masturbation. No, that's not Vision. He doesn't confuse that. A different character does. I forget his name in the show, but yeah, that's an error. On those low stakes pleasures alone, WandaVision delivers, but the question remains, what do we learn about Wanda and Vision by recreating the aspect ratios, costume design, and special effects of the past? I would say we learned that Wanda desperately wants to, I'd say both of them desperately want to be human and normal, but they can't. And they want to fit in, but they can't. That's so far like the message and the theme, and that their weirdness is what makes them them. It's what informs their love, and that's all they need. I think that's like the point so far. And that's also like what Wanda is trying to do to cope with this loss. What is the benefit of placing them in the suburbia of yesteryears? And what singular insights are really provided from these times in this place? This is something that I hope the show addresses. Why is Wanda choosing, is she choosing, we don't even know that, this era? And Wanda is somebody who, like, what would she know about TV sitcoms? What would she know about like this world? And yeah, it makes me think that like, so the show is actually going to go in the direction of it's not about it's not about her recreating this necessarily. Maybe her powers are informing this. That seems to be the case, but somebody else is like controlling this. Or like my pet theory is that somebody is doing this to her so she doesn't cause the multiverse to crash, or like somebody is putting her in like a fantasy to like entrap her and imprison her because they're scared of her powers. That's pretty true to Wanda, like herself. Like people are scared of her, and that's why like they try to control her. It's kind of a Dark Phoenix situation similarly, and I think that's what's going to come out of this. That's my theory anyway. I don't know if that's going to hold any water. We'll see. But yeah, it hasn't explained it so far. Perhaps the series will explore that in the remaining 6 episodes that were not provided for review. But until then, WandaVision asks the question, what exactly is your story, of its titular characters, but doesn't have an answer for it. So yeah, so that is the negative review. Definitely some, solid criticism there, fair criticism, I have to say. And I think it's something that it sounds to me like the author, Roxana Haddadi, is open-minded and not necessarily saying like this can't get better. It's just a situation of like, let's wait and see. There's potential here, but there are some like, missteps that it looks like some pitfalls they're falling into. So that is our positive review and negative review of WandaVision. Is WandaVision good? And the answer is, so far, I think yes. Most people say yes, but I think that it is important to glean from the negative reviews that there are some red flags that could possibly lead to the show not being good by the time we finish the whole thing. Hopefully we'll be able to check in on the show again. I don't know if we'll do recaps of anything, of any future episodes as it drops. I'd like to do that since we have this live stream. So if you're interested, let me know in the comments. And hello to Juanes in the live chat. He says, yeah, I mean, sitcoms don't propel their story forward most of the times. Yeah, that's true. This show definitely propels more story than those sitcoms, that's for sure. But okay, that'll do it for this episode of John in Theory. Thank you as always for checking out this live stream. Ring that bell if you want to know when I'm going live. And I appreciate everybody putting up with some of the audio issues from the other day. Hope we have an awesome week. It's a long day weekend, of course. Hope you all find time to, have a tribute and memoriam of MLK Day for our friends here in the U.S. Martin Luther King Jr. Day is tomorrow, since I'm doing this on a Sunday. And everybody be well. I will